So this movie has a really interesting history. The concept originally started in 2007 as part of Quentin Tarantino's Grindhouse feature, which was two movies, Planet Terror and Death Proof, and it had a bunch of fake trailers between them of upcoming like B horror movies, and one of them was called Thanksgiving, directed by Eli Roth, about a Thanksgiving kind of themed slasher killer on the loose in the town of Plymouth. And so that was in 2007. Now, 15, 16 years later, they have made this fake trailer into a very real movie. And that trailer is it's like 2.5 minutes long. It's like a real deal trailer. And it's played for laughs. It's super campy, and it's got so much film grain on it. And anyways, our 2023 version of this, we're in the town of Plymouth. Thanksgiving right around the corner. Happy family sits down, excited for the week to come. But they have a big Black Friday sale that is going on. This starts the film, and whole town is there. Everyone's super excited, but things take a tragic turn, and this Black Friday sale turns into mayhem, a riot. People are killed in kind of cartoonishly grotesque fashion. Someone's like crushed by a shopping cart, that sort of thing. Lots of people lose their lives, and it's this massive tragedy. And then we fast forward 1 year later to the next Thanksgiving, and the town is still like reeling from the riot and all the deaths. And there's people that are upset and protesting that this kind of Walmart-esque box store is still opening on Black Friday. And then, don't you remember the lives we lost? And in the midst of all that, a killer has come to Plymouth to exact revenge on those responsible for the Thanksgiving or the Black Friday riot, for the people in charge, people who let it happen, security, these kinds of things. And so that killer's on the loose. And so we have, of course, in any slasher film, we have a group of teenagers led by Nell Verlaque's Jessica, who are trying to stay alive and also discern the identity of the killer. This also stars Gina Gershon and Patrick Dempsey, as he's like the town sheriff. This movie has a lot of like tropes and really leans into them of a lot of slasher stuff, and it's a lot of fun. Zach, what do you think?
So I was definitely skeptical walking into Thanksgiving. I definitely figured it was going to be, just kind of a goofy holiday horror. I think my expectations were on par with like how I felt about last year's Violent Night, the David Harbour feature where he plays Santa Claus and he's in like a house and a bunch of baddies show up and he's got to do like this Die Hard thing to save the family from Christmas. You might have seen it. And I kind of felt the same way. It looks goofy, a bit more horror, but it's Eli Roth, right? I like Eli Roth fine. That guy made Hostel and that one movie about a bunch of cannibals in South America, I think. And I know he's working on that new Borderlands feature, which I think is probably going to be not good. But apparently he stopped down work on that. He got Tim Miller to work on that so he could come over and work on Thanksgiving, which, looking at interviews, is a movie he seems genuinely passionate about. Because watching it, you'd think, okay, it's kind of like a teen slasher movie you go see with your friends. But Roth feels differently. He says this is his send-up to Halloween, to Jason Voorhees. This is his send-up to any slasher ever. This is the most slasher-oriented movie he's ever done. And it has all the hallmarks, right? You've got your masked villain. You've got your whodunit. It could be anybody in the cast, right? You've got your set of core teens who are all super annoying and tech-stirring movies, and you almost can't wait to see get slaughtered. You've got your high body count with interesting kills. Some of them you laugh, some of them you cringe because they're disgusting. I was genuinely surprised at how much I ended up liking Thanksgiving. It is by far from a perfect movie, but it is really fun. And I think it will actually end up being something I end up watching at later holidays. What do you think, Andy? What's the best place to start talking about this?
So I think our setup, our plot is pretty interesting because we start off kind of at a family dinner and we meet our cast of characters. Patrick Dempsey's the town sheriff, and you have Jessica, and her dad is the owner of Right Mart, which is a stand-in for Walmart, of course. And they're kind of arguing, and someone's got to go work because it's Black Friday, and we have kind of a long intro or opening scene where we have this big setup of everyone trying to get into this store. The teens kind of sneak in and try, because they're trying to get in on the deals as well. But then the townspeople become unruly and they got really thick New England accents. It makes for a pretty funny and ridiculous opening. And then then quickly pivots to its slasher trappings, where we get our killer, who is named John Carver. I think in very much an ode to John Carpenter, who dresses like a pilgrim, but has this like pilgrim mask that he wears. So we don't know who he is, and he's in something that makes this very modern. He's posting a lot on Instagram, posting some of the gruesome kills, live streaming some of it, and that's part of how people know what's going on. Is like, oh look, the killer just posted us on his Instagram. So it's a little silly, but it's so much tongue in cheek. Like some of this, I was like, this is almost like Scary Movie level, like self-awareness.
Yeah, like Eli Roth has like cringe horror down to a science. Like he can torture somebody on screen, and I'm sitting there writhing in my seat, like, oh god, that looks awful, right? Hostel. That happens in this movie for sure. There is some grisly stuff. And one of my favorite moments in the movie, in regards to how Roth, I think, looks at technology and horror features, right? How are you going to have somebody getting chased by a slasher if they have a cell phone and can just call 911? He leans in. He leans all the way in, right? So our character is using Instagram and TikTok. Our killer is using Instagram to lure victims in. And one of my favorite like laughs from the movie that I think like shows just how well this movie can walk like the slasher genre and the comedy genre is when early in the movie a character is attacked, and in trying to get away they end up like locking themselves in a closet, and they get out their phone and they can't open the lock screen because they're like their phone's covered in blood, so they try to do Face ID and it doesn't work anyway, and there's like, oh, they like throw the phone. It's so great, and it feels so fitting for every time in my life I can't get my phone to open and Face ID doesn't work anyway, and it's like, god, like I hate this junk. Like Roth takes the opportunity to, I think, bend parts of the genre that would otherwise be a problem into something laughable when possible, and otherwise like sticks pretty close to what's worked in the past as far as horror trappings go. Like you've got a very solid plot with a big cast of characters, all with different motivations. It's anybody's guess who the killer is. I feel very confident in saying I had guessed who it was going to be before I even saw the movie, and I was totally right. Love that. That feels great. Makes you want to go tell your friends I was right about the movie. Like, yeah, I was surprised at how well I was engaged with what was going on in the film, not only because the plot moves effectively with a lot of characters, but because the tone's sharp. It's horror, it's funny, like it's and it's cut on a razor's edge. Like it's either one or the other, I think, typically, which can turn people off because sometimes it might feel too tongue in cheek. And I should say before I wrap this point, because it's getting way too long, some of the references to seasonal events are a little outdated. The Black Friday riot at the opening of this film is like half a decade old. But again, they came up with this gimmick in 2007 when Grindhouse came out. So it's been a minute. I feel okay saying your Black Friday references are a little outdated, but still, like the spirit of it is there, and I can respect that. It's a nostalgic Thanksgiving movie, right?
Yeah, I it's definitely a lot of fun. I felt that way as well, because we do so much online shopping now. We don't have the kind of right. I recently saw a tweet that's like, I miss the days when people die on Black Friday, which is real dark. But I think one of the things that kind of is doesn't work as well is that the plot both moves very quickly, like too quickly a lot of times, and also not fast enough. It'll get slow in moments, and then it'll also move through set pieces very quickly. And it has a lot of individual setups that are really fun. Like there's a chase in a school, there's an action scene during a parade. There's and these, a lot of this is taken from the 2007 trailer, like shot for shot, or at least the idea is there's this really cringy moment involving a trampoline and a knife. And so there's a lot of like small set pieces that work really well, but they don't necessarily all connect together very well. It's not very fluid from kind of step to step. That's kind of the only thing that doesn't work as well. And it's a lot like Eli Roth definitely has so many things he wants to cover, so many scenes he wanted to do, and he just kind of threw them all in together.
Yeah. It ends up moving pretty timely at an hour 46. Like it's not
Yeah.
a long feature, which is nice. And I guess like what I thought I'd compare this to in my head when I had heard about the Grindhouse connection was like Tusk, right? The Kevin Smith movie. That was a horror film where Justin Long, a podcaster, is slowly turned into a walrus surgically by a crazed scientist. And that came about as a conversation on Kevin Smith's podcast with his co-host buddies, and they talked about it one day, and they thought it was funny, so he wrote it down and then kept thinking about it, and ended up turning into a feature. That's a little how this feels like with Grindhouse, right? Like Eli Roth was making this thing with Tarantino and Rodriguez, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll put a trail in there. It'll be funny Thanksgiving." But like I can confidently say that this is such a more competent work than Tusk was. Like obviously Roth and Smith are two very different filmmakers. And for a goofy idea that somebody came up with and just kind of put together, Roth manages to put this together really efficiently. There are definitely plot holes for sure, but like in any slasher, there's plot holes. There's a great scene where one of the characters discovers like a wealth of security footage from the night of the riot, right? The Black Friday riot. And it's like a year old and it's on a hard drive and it's like 4K and it looks perfect. And it's like, that's never, ever how security footage, like that's whatever. Don't think about it too much. All right. Don't worry how the killer gets from this side of town to that side of town so fast. Like, it's not the point. The point is you're supposed to just kind of have a fun time hanging out with your friends going to see Thanksgiving. And I think in that way, like the best time to see this film is like opening night with your buddies, right? Like I feel like I saw it on a quiet Sunday morning, but like I could almost hear kids like snickering, like in the theater, like watching it, just goofing off with their friends, laughing about stuff, like. And in that way, like that's exactly what a slasher is supposed to be. So when I go watch Eli Roth talking about in interviews about how excited he is for people to see this, that this is his like slasher film send up, I have trouble disagreeing with him. I think he's kind of right. I think in that, like, if that's what he was aiming for, I think he nailed it.
Yeah, I saw this with kind of a smaller crowd. I purposely skipped a busier showing because I was like, that's going to be all teenagers, and I'm probably going to lose my mind. So I went with a little bit more mixed. I wanted to talk about our cast a little bit here. It's actually a pretty large group because we have our group of teens, which is like 6 people, and then we also have our group of adults, which is almost as many. Patrick Dempsey, like I said, is the local sheriff. You have her dad, Thomas Wright, right, played by the great Rick Hoffman, who's like the town, like the rich guy in town. You got other supporting adults, and then you have like 6 kids, and they're like, it is so funny because they're so stereotypical and so tropish, but it's like it's so self-aware, like it's on that on purpose. But it's like a group of jocks and their girlfriends, and like they're mostly mean, but are the main character, Jessica, is the one nice one. I did want to mention one of the teen characters is played by Addison Rae, who, if you don't know, is a massive, massive TikTok star. Shot Up was one of the she was like number 1 or 2 for a while as far as most followers on TikTok. She's now pivoted into film and TV, which is kind of crazy to think about. That's where she started from.
Yeah.
And she's finding this not a huge role, not the lead or anything. But it's a big cast and it's fun. Like I said, our jocks are mean, they're cruel, they don't care about anyone. They meet fitting ends. And our main, we have a couple of good people who are trying to solve the case, but also stay alive. So it's a fun time. Not Gina Gershon is criminally underused in this, but fun to see her in here.
Gina, I can't talk about it because it'd be spoilers. Gina Gershon's great in this movie. Everybody's great in this movie. We got to move on, unfortunately, because we got a long show. We got a lot to get to. I don't know if I have many more thoughts on this. I don't want to spoil it, but I can say before we get to formal recommendations, that, like I said, I was surprised at how much I ended up liking Thanksgiving. Like I went in with a bit of a smirk and ended up walking out with a grin. So with that, Andy, any other thoughts for recommendations?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Thanksgiving?
Definitely recommend it to fans of horror. If you're into the horror genre, you'll be right at home. Like, you'll recognize so many references to other horror properties, the slasher all the slasher genres as well. Like I said, it's really funny. It's pretty self-aware. It's somewhere between Scream and Scary Movie in its self-awareness. There's some really funny moments. There's a lot of really cringe, painful moments as well. Eli Roth really juggles all aspects of it. Definitely fun in a group. If you're not a fan of horror, probably skip though.
Yeah, same. It's definitely a horror film for horror's sake, but it's PG-13. I think no, it's got to be R. It's rated R for sure. No, I take it back. This is an
absolutely.
R-rated feature. Yeah, they start dropping the F-bomb fast in the open. I remember being like, "Oh yeah, this is definitely an R-rated film." Great for kids to sneak into, right? Not that I'm advocating you should sneak into movies, but this just feels like that kind of feature, and in that way, like I think it lands it. I think Thanksgiving's not a bad time. Definitely horror though. Like if you're not a horror person, don't throw this on during the holiday thinking it's going to be Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It isn't, but not a bad time. With that, we're going to move into our next segment because we got to move through this. Andy, you mind introducing this for us?
It's time for the trailer park.